In a development that has shaken the Middle East, reports have emerged of an Israeli strike on Doha, the capital of Qatar, sending shockwaves across the region and raising urgent questions about the stability of alliances. The attack, which has been described as unprecedented in its scale and symbolism, has triggered global condemnation and intense diplomatic activity. Yet, in a carefully worded statement, the United States has emphasized that while the strike on Doha was not something that brings joy, it will not alter Washington's broader alignment with Israel, its long-standing ally. This statement, nuanced and deliberate, underscores the complexity of balancing international outrage with entrenched geopolitical partnerships. According to early details, the strike was carried out late in the night, with Israeli jets reportedly targeting what Tel Aviv claims were logistical and intelligence support hubs linked to hostile regional networks. Qatar has strongly denied these allegations, stressing that the attack was an act of aggression against a sovereign state. Video footage shared on local social media showed plumes of smoke rising in parts of Doha, though officials in Qatar quickly moved to calm fears, stating that damage was limited and civilian casualties were minimal. The international community reacted swiftly. Regional powers including Iran, Turkey, and Saudi Arabia condemned the strike, calling it a dangerous escalation that could destabilize the entire Gulf region. The United Nations also issued an urgent appeal for restraint, warning that any further strikes could ignite a broader conflict that would be difficult to contain. European Union officials, while condemning the attack, expressed frustration at Washington's stance, urging the United States to reconsider its blanket support for Israel amid rising tensions. Yet, Washington's reaction was measured. In a briefing, a senior U.S. official said, "The strike on Doha is not something we celebrate. We understand the concerns it raises across the region. However, our security partnership with Israel remains intact, and this development does not change that reality." The statement is a clear reflection of the U.S.'s delicate balancing act, acknowledging the concerns of Arab partners while remaining firm in its strategic commitments to Israel. Analysts argue that this event exposes the fragile fault lines in Middle Eastern geopolitics. Qatar, known for its mediation efforts in conflicts such as the ongoing Gaza war and for hosting key U.S. military bases, suddenly finds itself in the middle of a direct confrontation. For Israel, the strike may have been designed as a warning shot, signaling that any perceived support for its adversaries will be met with force. For Washington, however, it is a diplomatic nightmare. The U.S. relies heavily on Qatar as a partner for regional operations, especially in Afghanistan and broader counter-terrorism efforts. At the same time, it cannot afford to alienate Israel, particularly at a moment when Israeli security concerns dominate the regional agenda. This dual dependency creates a tightrope for American diplomacy, one that risks unraveling under the weight of conflicting priorities. In Doha, officials have urged calm but are calling for accountability. The Qatari Foreign Ministry issued a statement labeling the strike as a violation of international law and an assault on regional stability. Qatar's ambassador to the United Nations has requested an emergency Security Council meeting, underscoring that the attack represents not just an affront to Qatar but a dangerous precedent for all smaller states in the region. Meanwhile, reactions from the Arab Street have been fierce. Protests erupted in parts of the Gulf and beyond, with demonstrators carrying banners denouncing Israeli aggression and criticizing Washington's muted response. Social media has been flooded with calls for solidarity with Qatar, while some commentators have warned that this attack could mark a turning point in Gulf relations, especially if Doha feels pressured to recalibrate its diplomatic engagements. From Israel's perspective, officials insist the strike was not aimed at civilians but rather at neutralizing emerging threats. In a statement, Israel's defense spokesperson claimed that Qatar has been turning a blind eye to networks that provide financial and logistical support to groups hostile to Israel. These accusations, though unproven, form part of Israel's wider narrative that it must act preemptively to ensure its survival in an increasingly hostile neighborhood. Military experts point out that Israel's decision to extend its operations beyond its traditional areas of conflict reflects a growing confidence in its reach, supported by advanced U.S.-supplied weapons and intelligence systems. Yet, such actions also risk overextension and backlash, potentially drawing Israel into conflicts it cannot fully control. Washington, for its part, faces increasing scrutiny both domestically and internationally. Critics argue that the U.S.'s unwavering support for Israel emboldens such actions, leaving little room for accountability. Within the United States, lawmakers are divided. Some Republicans have praised Israel's decisive stance against perceived threats, while several Democrats have urged the Biden administration to reconsider its policies, arguing that unconditional support undermines U.S. credibility in the Arab world. The long-term implications of the strike on Doha remain uncertain. Diplomatically, Qatar may leverage its strong ties with Turkey and Iran to strengthen its position against Israel, though this risks drawing Doha further into the region's complex rivalries. Economically, any perception of instability could unsettle energy markets, given Qatar's pivotal role as a leading exporter of liquefied natural gas. Already, oil prices saw minor fluctuations following news of the strike, reflecting market anxiety about potential supply disruptions. At the human level, the incident has generated fear and uncertainty. Ordinary Qataris woke to the reality that their capital had been directly targeted, a rare occurrence in the relatively secure Gulf region. Though officials insist that civilian areas were not significantly affected, the psychological impact of such an attack is profound, leaving residents uneasy about what the future may hold. As the dust settles, the pressing question remains. Will this strike escalate into a wider conflict, or will it remain an isolated flashpoint? Much depends on the choices made in Washington and Tel Aviv. If the United States continues to downplay the attack while reinforcing its alliance with Israel, regional actors may feel compelled to respond more aggressively, raising the risk of a dangerous spiral. Conversely, if Washington exerts pressure on Israel to exercise restraint, there may still be room for de-escalation. In the halls of power, the message is clear: Middle Eastern geopolitics has entered yet another volatile chapter. The U.S. may not have welcomed the strike on Doha, but its unwillingness to break with Israel highlights the enduring grip of long-term alliances over short-term outrage. For Qatar, the incident marks a sobering reminder of its vulnerability, even as it remains a key diplomatic player. For Israel, it reflects a growing willingness to project power across new frontiers, regardless of the risks. And for the broader region, it underscores a painful truth that peace remains elusive, and that each strike and counterstrike brings the Middle East closer to the brink of another protracted crisis. This story is still unfolding, and the world will be watching closely as leaders weigh their next moves in a region already on edge.